Rebekah Roth here again, and I want to share with you an interesting thing I'd uncovered while I was looking into 9/11. It was the history of something called a sting operation and how that all started with the FBI. Back in 1976, the FBI had set up a fencing operation. It was staffed by FBI agents who were posing as mobsters. Sounds like a movie. To purchase stolen goods. The operation was such a success that the method became known as a sting. It was actually called Operation Sting. But between 1978 and the 1980s somewhere, the FBI began trafficking stolen art and securities. In another sting operation, they used a front company called Abdul Enterprises. The sting operation was known later as Abscam. I think there is a movie about that, where they had actually caught a U.S. senator, 6 congressmen, and several other politicians. And they were caught by agents who were posing, believe it or not, as Arabs. Imagine that. Now, if you can keep not just 9/11 in your mind, but nearly every what we were told were acts of terror in the United States and around the world in your mind, going back to the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center. Well, this is pretty amazing, but I learned from reading 2 books written by the builder of that bomb, as well as numerous other newspaper articles and even court documents. What we were told about that event was not quite the entire story. You see, in his book titled Undercover, the FBI asset turned informant and bomb builder named Imad Salem, a former Egyptian military intelligence officer who came to the United States in 1987, admits that he built the bomb under FBI supervision. You can find all of this information. It's still all online, if you don't believe me. But the young Palestinian that the FBI claimed rented the van from the Ryder Company in Jersey City had flunked his driver's license test 4 times and more than likely did not possess either a driver's license or insurance. So renting a Ford Econo van or anything else from the Ryder Company would have been impossible. I eventually found a document that claimed that the FBI asset turned informant Imad Salem was actually who rented the van in Mohammed Salameh's name and address and phone number. Now here's where it gets interesting to me. Either the young 20-something Salameh or Imad Salem used the address and phone number on the rental documentation of an Israeli woman, a known Mossad agent or asset. She's been referred to both ways, named Josie Hadass. The FBI quickly traced the rental form information to her apartment, where they found everything for making bombs, from explosive residue to wires, and even a how-to manual. I kid you not, that's what they said. Now, we should ask this. If Mohammed Salameh, the young 20-something Palestinian, didn't fill out the rental forms, and they were filled out by the Egyptian intelligence FBI person, Imad Salem, we might want to look at the possibility that Imad Salem was somehow associated with the Israeli Mossad. How else would he know this Israeli woman, her address, and her phone number? She was about the same age as Imad Salem, more than 25 years older than the young Palestinian she had hired him to rent a van to do some job for her. Interestingly, that van was rented, and Salameh asked her, his boss, if he could take a bunch of his friends to the grocery store that night. It was the night before the bombing, and they went shopping. Well, someone stole the van while they were in the grocery store. Salome came back in a panic, called the police, reported the theft. The following day, unbeknownst to him, that van was used in the bombing. Later, I had found that Imad Salem, whose relationship with the New York FBI had been severed about 5 months prior to the bombing, was actually seen at the World Trade Center bombing site that morning and was seen at a local hospital for ear damage that would be expected from being near a very loud blast. Imad apparently never trusted his FBI handlers. And it was later exposed by the media in August of 1993 in a New York Newsday article that I found that the US government and the FBI were complicit in the New York City World Trade Center 1993 bombing. Imad had proof on tape that the FBI had supervised the bomb building. And in his book, Imad Salem makes some interesting comments for an Egyptian who had actually fought against Israel in the 1973 war, the Yom Kippur War. He mentions a group of Jewish prisoners early on in his book, in particular a woman sergeant who somehow caught his eye. He doesn't go into details about her, but it seems that he, for some reason, changed his mind about Israelis, and she might have had something to do with that. Upon my second reading of that book, I had to ask, could that woman have been Josie Hadass? Could that be the connection between this Israeli woman, who was the boss of the young Palestinian Patsy, and Imad Salem and his sudden change of heart toward the enemy, Israelis? He'd fought against them in a war. I could find no other possible explanation for Imad Salem knowing her phone number and her address that he used on the truck rental form. In one article from a New York newspaper, a reporter seemed to have some inside knowledge of Josie Hadass and asked the FBI on the scene if she was a Mossad operative. Interestingly, the FBI replied, quote, "If she was, we wouldn't tell you." Well, I found that odd, but not as odd as finding that on the day of the bombing, an Israeli intelligence group sent an urgent communique over a telephone access computer network about the event, about the bombing at the World Trade Center. This communique was picked up when it was discovered accidentally on a confidential government information base known as Matara, M-A-T-A-R-A. It's an official source of classified data pertaining to intelligence and security matters, of course, of Israel. Either leaked or accessed by news sources, the communique states that Israeli intelligence had advanced knowledge of both the timing and the target of the World Trade Center bombing, 1993. And what it would be attributed to, it would be attributed or blamed on known activists from the occupied territories, otherwise known as Palestine. 3 days after the bombing, an Israeli operative at Shin Bet, cited by Israeli journalists, she was boasting of the capabilities of the Israeli intelligence and their foreknowledge of the bombing. The communique was discussed on Matara. In another article from a Canadian-based magazine, it was reported that Josie Hadass was both a Mossad operative that had penetrated the Islamic circles and that she wasn't alone. She was working with Imad Salem, and it was Imad Salem that rented the van. Well, that indicates to me that it's possible that Imad was not only working with the New York FBI, but he was also working with the Israelis. I found it interesting in his book that Imad never mentions either Mohammed Salameh or Josie Hadass. He does, however, mention someone else that plays an important role in what we were led to believe was Islamic terrorism. Now, I'll leave you with a question to think about. Was our own government involved in these sting operations used to set up Arabs or Muslims to convince Americans that we should hate this group of people? From everything that I have uncovered, this 1993 incident, the bombing of the World Trade Center, is not the only type of event that the Israelis had foreknowledge of. They didn't share that foreknowledge with our CIA or our FBI, and we probably should ask the question, why not? Why wouldn't they share that information? Because I will tell you that the Mossad also claimed to have foreknowledge of 9/11. And you'll remember the 5 dancing Israelis who, when they went home to Israel, said, "We were sent to document the event," which tells us they were sent from Israel to document what happened on 9/11 because someone in Israel sent them, because someone in Israel knew it was going to happen.